welcome you to MASWO's International Women's Day celebrations. We are so excited to have you. A warm welcome to all. Every year, on the 8th of March, we celebrate International Women's Day across the globe. It is a day to recognize the achievement of women and a call to action, encouraging everyone to stand up for women's rights and gender equality. Throughout the history, women had to fight for freedom and rights that we enjoy today. 150 years ago, women could not vote, stand in parliament, receive proper medical attention. Sorry about that. It's my 150 years ago, women could not vote, stand in parliament, receive proper medical attention, own property, access their legal support, get paid as men, visit the same public areas as men visit, or get a proper education. The list goes on. Changes occurred gradually through the tireless efforts of brave women and men fighting together for what is right. Gender equality is one of the fundamental human rights, yet women continue to experience several forms of barriers and discrimination. Their career aspirations are stifled by the glass ceiling. Gender continues to be a criterion for having dignity, respect, freedom, and success. As half of the world population, women drive major economic growth and major contributions to the society. Every day, we see women taking lead role in taking care of their families, neighborhoods, and the community at large. We see them tirelessly working in agriculture, manufacturing, and services such as healthcare. A significant number of women do not get paid decent wages, nor do they get benefits such as paid sick leave. A vast number of our women did not have the privilege to work remotely and had to encounter the virus threat on a daily basis. Those who worked remotely had to struggle hard to balance work, family, and childcare responsibilities. Amidst numerous challenges, women demonstrated their indomitable spirit and leadership in private and public settings. Social work is a profession dominated by women, but it is men who mostly occupy managerial and leadership positions in our workplaces. There exist immense opportunities for more women to be in leadership roles. Though women form a major chunk of the workforce in most occupational settings, we see a severe deficit of their presence at middle and top levels of our political, corporate, and public offices. Women, especially from racialized groups, often shy away from even attempting to move upward in the hierarchy due to systemic barriers. We see women intentionally being undervalued, bullied, and harassed in our offices, not only by men, but by women as well. Even though a handful of them move up, they face numerous challenges to break the male and racial supremacy and establish their own ways. Even in 2021, the patriarchal, colonial, and racist elements limit their political and social participation, systemically forcing them to play subordinate roles. When we are together in the fight for gender equity, we become role models and inspiration for our children, who eventually will live in a society where all women and men enjoy equal rights and opportunities in every domain of life. This year's theme, Choose to Challenge, urges us to challenge the status quo at individual and societal levels. Every woman should undertake the challenge of taking creative steps to break the systemic barriers and to realize their true potential. Today, we have gathered here to explore the ways in which we can nurture leadership. We have two successful leaders, Dr. Usha George and Dr. Agnes Thomas, as guest speakers, who have experienced navigating and mastering the system through their relentless efforts. We have three youth leaders, Irene Mathew, Gloria John, and Merryl Varghese, from our Maxwell family to share their views on women in leadership. Sakhi Manuel is moderating the session. It's my pleasure to welcome Sakhi. Sakhi holds a master's degree in social work from India and has postgraduate certificate in human resources management from XLRI, one of the premier institutes in India. She served as a lecturer in the Department of Social Work at Garden City College in Bangalore and later worked as an assistant HR manager for an IT company in Technopark, Trivandrum. Sakhi then moved to New Zealand to pursue an international qualification in social work and completed a postgraduate diploma in social practice from Unitech. Further to which, she worked in New Zealand to support individuals with intellectual disabilities and worked with women experiencing domestic violence. She relocated to Canada in 2015 and completed the bridging program for internationally educated social workers from Ryerson University. Sakhi is currently working as a child protection worker at York Region Children's Aid Society. Over to you, Sakhi.
Thank you, Kusumam, for the kind introduction. Once again, welcome to today's session on women in leadership, and it's a pleasure to be the moderator. Before we begin, let's establish a few rules. Please mute yourself if you're not talking. This session will be recorded for the purposes of future learning and ongoing professional development. Also, please be advised that this recording will be available on our social media platform. Questions are welcome, and you can type your question in the chat box so that it can be addressed during the Q&A session. Thank you. We will begin with the land acknowledgement now. In the spirit and intent of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations, we acknowledge the traditional indigenous territories on which we gather at the beginning of all Maxwell meetings. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is a traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Scugog, Hiawatha, and Alderville First Nation. By learning, understanding, and acknowledging, we wish to pay respect to Turtle Island, Mother Earth, and the rich Indigenous history of Ontario. Now, moving on to our session, we are all gathered here, centering on the theme Women in Leadership, as we recently celebrated International Women's Day. On this occasion, I would like to echo a few lines from the webpage of United Nations Women, which resonates quite well, and it goes this way. Women of the world want and deserve an equal future, free from stigma, stereotypes, and violence, a future that's sustainable, peaceful, with equal rights and opportunities for all. To get us there, the world needs women at every table where decisions are being made. We are fortunate to have with us today two distinguished women in leadership positions, and that too from our own Malayali community in Canada. We have Dr. Usha George and Dr. Agnes Thomas. Dr. Usha George is a director at Ryerson Center for Immigration and Settlement, as well as Faculty of Community Services at School of Social Work at Ryerson University. We are also fortunate to have Dr. Agnes Thomas, who's the Executive Director of Catholic Cross Cultural Services. We also have three aspiring youth, Irene Mathew, Gloria John, and Merryl Varghese, who will be sharing their thoughts during the session. And towards the end, we will have the Q&A session. Without further ado, we will start with Irene Mathew. Irene is a grade 10 student at Father Michael Getz Secondary School. She volunteered at St. Alphonsus Cathedral Bookstall in helping with inventory and managing sales. Some of her hobbies include painting, dancing, and crocheting. Turning it over to Irene.
Thank you, Sakhi. I would like to start off with a quote by Coco Chanel. A girl should be two things, who and what she wants. Hi, my name is Irene, and I came to talk about, or not even talk about, I came to remind you of who you are or who we are inside your values and your beliefs, your flaws. Because once you understand who really that person is, that small, tiny person that lives inside of you holding so much personality, you yourself, me included, would take the first step in finding a more unique version of yourself. We most often do not allow ourselves to think about the future because we're afraid of change. We are afraid to move away from what is already so familiar, either that or something else. We have to straighten up. We must let our dreams evolve, loosen up, shake it off a little bit. Change is the only content thing that lies ahead of you. You're never too old or too experienced to learn something new, and you're never too old or experienced to learn something new that you believe that person has everything already as you in your will to be able to achieve your dreams and to be fearless. I know what you might be thinking right now because I wanted to be a student with an average or above average marks. You having an expectation for yourself is one of the causes for this. And what am I today? I'm a student with above average marks, but I'm also a painter, a singer, a dancer, and even a weightlifter. How did I go from becoming just an average student to becoming all these things? Where did they all come from? They came from my choices, the choices that I wanted for myself. I let my dreams fly and I gave them wings. But who you want to be, because all you have to do is fearless. All you have to be is fearless. How many of you walk down a street, always looking back constantly, and when you see a person walking in front of you, you fumble through your bags to find keys or something to defend yourself? But from what? What are you so scared about? What is it that's haunting you, that's making you feel like the need to defend it yourself? What are you so scared about? Let me tell you a story. One day, after my gym coach area thing, the boys basketball coach decided to ask me to come and play one-on-one with a grade 11 player. I personally am not a basketball player, but since he wanted me to go, so I decided to try. When I went back in, there was a lot of negativity that I felt, saying that I shouldn't play because he was a guy and he was obviously more taller and stronger than me, and he was also in grade 11 and played basketball more. But I still wanted to play because the coach asked me to play, and I didn't mind playing. It was just for fun. And I ended up playing, and to my surprise, I ended up winning. And that's a very big surprise because I'm not a basketball player. After that, I felt so good about myself. But after a lot of people would tell me, you're just like a guy because you played and you won. You have like broad shoulders, you're really tall, you're so masculine. But I kept going, and now I play as a substitute for a grade 11's basketball team. I wasn't even a basketball player. I want you to see that you don't have to be tall or strong or weak and skinny. You just have to believe in yourself and know that you can do anything you put your mind to. You stay strong and stay confident. A happy Women's Day.
Thank you, Irene. We now have Dr. Agnes Thomas, who leads the Catholic Cross-Cultural Services Senior Management Team, and she joined the organization in 2018. She is a leading community development practitioner and academic with a passion for social justice issues, community building, and organizational transformation. In this role, Dr. Agnes Thomas is committed to working with a broad scope of stakeholders to build consensus collaboratively, deliver change, and drive impact for the 30,000 clients served by the CCS's suite of programs and services. Dr. Agnes Thomas served in the not-for-profit sector for more than 2 decades, locally and internationally, in various capacities and leadership roles. She served on a number of not-for-profit boards in Toronto. She has also appeared frequently as a guest lecturer and conference presenter, and has an extensive body of research and published work. Her passion for advocating for the rights of marginalized groups led her to complete and receive her PhD in adult education and community development with an award-winning thesis from Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at the University of Toronto. She has a Master's of Arts in Critical Disability Studies from York University, a diploma in social development from the Coady International Institute, and a Bachelor of Arts from Mahatma Gandhi University. Dr. Agnes Thomas enjoys teaching, training, coaching, mentoring, volunteering, writing, and photography. She and her husband have 3 children and live in Scarborough. I now invite Dr. Agnes Thomas.
Thank you, Sashi. That was much when somebody else speak of your bio. But Irene, congratulations. Well done. We need a lot of young women coming up and speak up and have a dream and a place that they occupy in our midst. So I'm so glad to see young people coming up and speaking up and sharing their stories. So I am so privileged. I feel so privileged to be with you today. It is such an honor and it is humbling to see so many of you come together, celebrate International Women's Day, talk about gender equity and issues, because we do have leaders that we can look up to. We have seen historically people coming and being successful and making choices, but that is far and few in between. So it is good for us to look at why and what stops us and how do we change that, right? So given we have about 15 to 20 minutes, and some of the things I'm going to share, it's going to be general immigrant story. However, things that applies to women, and I would think some of it is broader for anyone who is coming here as a new immigrant and people of color in particular. So I pulled out some data just in preparation to this talk. And so one of the groups that I kind of look up time and again to look at women in leadership is the catalyst.org. So according to the 2019 survey, so all women in C-suite or like in top senior leadership is 21% around the world. And out of that 21% is 4% women of color. And when it comes to Canada, it is, but in managerial or middle management positions, there are 38% women of color in 12%. But when it comes to Canada, I was just looking at the data, which is very interesting. So 31.2% of women in leadership and women of color, 5.9%. But women who identify as visible minority of 1.9%. So you could imagine how small the number of people who are, and number of women who are of color or identify themselves as visible minority. So we have a long way to go when we don't need to celebrate a day dedicated for women. When we are able to stop saying she's a woman leader, that is when we know that we achieve the goal, that we are celebrating humans, we are celebrating our individual roles and contributions in the society. Because right now we need to have a day dedicated, which shows we are still not there because it needs to be highlighted, needs to be mentioned, gender, race, class, disabilities, and it's all closely connected, right? And so when you look at social integration, employment comes to mind. And so again, women who are participating, it's not that in Canada, for example, 82% of women between age 25 to 50 participate in employment, some employment related activity. Then why we have 1.9% in leadership? So we have to really have a critical look at that. And I could see there are issues that are connected to, so some of the things that I am seeing is that there is system level issues, right? Like, there is how policy and legislation plays into it, as well as what we see and who we see as leaders in the media. I think that plays. So as young people, I have 2 girls. If they are only seeing people who are not of themselves, and they are not ever seeing young people, women of color in the media as leaders, they're never going to think they can be that. Recently I think a young girl talking about Kamala Harris. Oh, look, there is someone who looks like me, so I could be that tomorrow. So we do need to celebrate people who are in the social space and encourage more people to, that would encourage people to come forward. And so I think another reason I see as a gap is that, so if we don't have people of color or people, women who are leaders in leadership, then there is always that biased view. I'm not saying everyone, this is not inclusive of everyone that we deal with and we interact with, right? Like, so our leadership structure, our board, so something encouraging that I was just reading. So in 2018, it was 18.2% of women representing in various boards in Canada. And in 2020, that is 27.6%. I mean, to me, that is a positive growth, although it is still very minor. And so there are changes, but I think there is a long way to go. And so HR practices. And so one of the biggest challenge, so I did my thesis around women who are doing cash work. So one of the biggest challenge that I saw and heard from the women that I have interviewed and took part in various case studies that I have done is that the life balance. So always women ending up choosing to stay home, looking after kids. And then our culture and community plays a role in who should be out there. So I remember particularly, so I interviewed people from 10 South Asian countries or South Asia, from Asia. So a few of them said, one of the challenges they found was not necessarily their partners were not supportive. They found they would be out there doing something and that somebody from the community would say, oh, why is she out there? Why is she doing that? So that would becomes a problem in the household. And so what are we and how cultural expectations and perceptions, even after coming here, we already have so much to settle when we are coming to this country as newcomers. And then there are, what are we doing as women? So there is one particular story remain very strong in my mind. There is this woman I met from Pakistan. She's quite well established in terms of her home-based business. And so she was going to put out a stall when we were doing an activity downtown. And somebody called her in-laws back home to say that she is out there in the public space doing the, what kind of a shame, right? And so I just want to touch upon two things that stays with me when I talk to young women, when I talk to people of color and women in particular, is that how we instill culture of fear, how we instill a culture of shame in such a way that, oh, you are talking, you are in place you are not supposed to be. And then that calls for a greater sacrifice, right? Like, so what am I willing to sacrifice to be out there? And so these are kind of critical things for us to be aware of. Am I stopping somebody? Am I pulling somebody down because that person is actually doing something different? So I think we all need to be aware of that. So that's the individual level. And also, are we an encourager? Right? Like, do we encourage people when we see potential, when we see leadership, or do we say, oh yeah, she's another person? So I personally had, so if I talk about me coming into leadership or making choices, probably not always so popular, was that, oh yeah, she cares about books and her studies or other things more than her kids. This is someone who told me that personally. And so then on, I realized, okay, not everything and not everybody is for you. So you need to really choose carefully who you hang out with and who you listen to. So I had to cut down all negative voices, which means I had to be really isolated. And there time and again as a leader, you feel lonely. I mean, leadership in general is a lonely journey. But as a woman and feeling alienated because people are putting that, oh, for her priorities this or that. Like there is so much judgment. So why do we need to do that? And so we had to grow above and beyond to make those choices. And I think for me that I feel quite blessed that I do have a partner who would say, why are you saying no? I think this is something you can do, right? Like, so I have a supporting person next to me who would also have pressure because I'm doing things but probably not considered in quote unquote normal. So again, we have things that we define as normal. So I think we have to recheck what do we consider normal when it comes to women, when it comes to responsibilities at home, in the community, and in the broader spectrum of things. I think when we have those kind of critical views, we would be able to make a small step forward, and I think it will really go further. And so another thing about leadership when I think about is that if you think of leadership and if that is the way that you are going, I think we all are leaders. Become that leader in the role where you are at and where you are now. So I always tell, I am so privileged to work with CCS. I think the person who is sitting at our reception has an equal or more important role than what I play, because she is the person who anyone who walks through our door meet first. So that person's investment in their role and their leadership plays a role in how CCS is experienced and viewed by our clients or our participants. So when we look at leadership that way, there are no roles that are small. But people who wanted to grow up, because we do grow into that hierarchical place of leadership, we do need to have a vision or dream beyond your personal comfort and get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Pay attention to that, because not everything is going to be comfortable. Not everything you hear is going to be comfortable. So we got to get comfortable with what is not comfortable and encourage others who are coming along with you instead of looking at the other person as a competition. And also celebrate small successes. Invest in other people, because you do not need to be good at everything. If you ask me to sing instead of talk today, you're going to have a flop presentation here, because I cannot sing, and I know that, right? And so we all need to cut down on and focus on things that are important, and things that are not so popular that I have done. I think important to share is that sometimes you make choices that are not really popular or positive, and you pay the price for it. But if you really truly believe this is going to take you forward, I think we should absolutely stick to it. And if I'm going to be like specific, I would say there are times I made choices that made me move to different places. Sometimes people were like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you making that change? So my one advice to all of you, if you think of leadership and wants to make a greater impact, if you're not growing, if you are not learning, and if you don't have an environment you're making your growth possible, move on. And if you are, I know there is one big challenge I hear from people, financial stability. So make sure you are able to be agile in that area, because that's very important. If you don't have that stability, that stops us. But then invest in learning and reach out to people, find mentors who can support you. Like when I look at myself, I feel like I stand on the shoulders of many people who invested in me, people who I reached out and asked feedback. So one of the thing, a cultural construct, which sometimes doesn't work for us, is that we are not good at seeking feedback. And we are not good at providing constructive feedback. We are either it is not black and white. It is not a binary, right? Like you have to be really willing to provide constructive feedback, and you need to be intentional when you receive feedback, because not everything that everybody say don't have to be bad. Take what is good for you from that, and don't shy away from asking. I always reach out to my team members or people who I trust in my network. Uh, what do you think about that? Or did I make any sense that time? So, like that is how you improve. And talking about networks, so for newcomers, the biggest challenge is our social networks, right? Like, so we are comfortable with our communities and people we know. Invest in learning of other cultures and people of different backgrounds, and that is where your mind like get expanded and grow, and your understanding of other people. So if we are going to hang out with people of our own, you're never going to be getting that opportunity to learn from the others. I think for me, one of the biggest gift living in Toronto is that I get to make friends with people from other places. I get to meet women, strong women who are making choices that I'm always in awe of. So reach out, seek out. And as I already mentioned, cut down people who are negative and willing to pay the price sometimes. So one of the prices I had to pay, especially during my PhD, having 3 kids and a full-time job, was I never attended any parties. So I had no social life. So I lost number of friends because people not always everyone understands the journey you make. So, so always invest in a few who would understand and work with you and support you instead of trying to be popular among all of. And so again, those type of things pay big time when you are willing to do that. And also be a lifelong learner. I think that's so very important. Invest in learning, because for me, one of the biggest piece or revelation was, I went into PhD thinking that, okay, so I'm going to learn, I'm going to, this is it. And the day I defended my thesis, I remember that feeling clearly and telling my thesis supervisor, it feels like grade 1, because you just realize how little you know, how much more you have to go. Um, so, and the challenge is that finding mentors that who would suit your vision and your dream. So find those. Spend time learning of other cultures, other people, other journeys. And in Canada, we have people who have become, who were immigrants or who came as refugees, who made a difference, like Vivian Pay, who was the first senator who was elected. She was in the chamber 1998 to 2012. She immigrated from China. So look women up who actually contributed. And Michelle Jean, our Governor General, she finished in 2010. She came to Canada as a refugee from Haiti. So there are women who came, who made a difference and took up the space. I think we are allowed to. This is a great country in terms of exploring and taking those. Despite all those things that I said earlier, if we are able to fight our own fears, if we are able to invest, there is a way forward. And I think when I look at my life, that is what I think. So if you're investing and if you are really reaching out to people and willing to take that additional, there are ways to move forward, and not all is lost. I think we are in a great country, in a great time. This is the time. So as Irene mentioned, we need young women, young leaders, and we need men who support women to move forward. And as I said in my my research participant shared, oh, I saw your wife in that store. Why was she there? It is nobody's business. So men, you needed to, if you are in a married, in a heterosexual household, don't control your wife because somebody else said something about that or asked that. So that again hinder, because again, sometimes women ask, so for me to move forward, maybe it is leaving home. Why is that way? Why it has to be that way? It won't have to be. So I think the future is bright. And I think you all are social workers, people who are building bridges, and women who are building bridges, change makers. And I look forward to partner with you and support you in whatever way I can. But my journey also continue because I believe I have a long way to go. I have a lot more to learn. But I think together we can do it. It is our collective responsibility while we make our individual choices. So happy International Women's Day. Thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Agnes Thomas, for your inspiring words. Coming up is Gloria John. Gloria is a grade 10 student at Philip Pocock Catholic Secondary School. Her hobbies include dancing, swimming, and biking. She has volunteered at the Canadian Food for Children Warehouse. In 2019, Gloria was the first prize winner for the Mary Matthews Public Speaking Contest by the Catholic Women's League of Canada at the inter-school level in Peel region, and moved on to win the second prize at the inter-region level in the GTA. Over to you, Gloria.
Thank you, Sakhi. The other day, my mom asked, "Why is there no International Men's Day?" And my dad's response was simple. He said, "Every day is Men's Day, so there's no need." Good morning, Masswell family and friends. At first, I thought my dad's response was funny. But after reflecting, I realized there is truth to it, as it emphasizes the need for women to have this one day for ourselves. We would be ignorant to believe sexism is still not an issue. Just because it presents itself in different ways around the world does not mean it still doesn't exist everywhere. Sexism can range from femicide to even smaller things such as microaggressions. The way you were brought up plays a huge role in the mindset you have, but you cannot use it as an excuse to continue acting in a way that is hurtful. The way you were raised only explains the way you act, it does not excuse it. We have to be able to learn and willing to grow. Some things that were socially acceptable 100 years ago could not even be imagined being normal now. But we cannot assume that just because things are better, that they are perfect. We update our phones, get our hair cut, and change our clothing styles depending on the current trends. We must be just as willing to make changes in our daily lives when it comes to societal issues. 1 in 3 women have gone through physical and/or sexual assault. Pause and think about that number. Statistically speaking, this means if you were to have 3 women in front of you, 1 of them is likely to have been assaulted. This is not taken seriously enough. Only 1% of rapes lead to felony convictions, while 89% of victims face emotional and physical effects. So in other words, the victims face more punishment than the perpetrators. We must hold the people responsible for these crimes accountable. We often find that parents don't allow their daughters to do some things for their safety. But why not teach your son to be respectful as well? Why not teach your son to be the kind of man you would feel safe to be around your daughter? Why is it that we only expect the woman to conform and not the men? We must speak up about things like this. As women, we must not be afraid to use our voice. We must raise our hand up in class, apply for that promotion, and express our disapproval at that sexist remark. As Meghan Markle said, women don't need to find a voice. They have a voice. They need to feel empowered to use it, and people need to be encouraged to listen. If Meghan Markle is able to speak up to the whole world against the royal family and all the injustices she has faced, we can too. Me saying all this does not mean I don't acknowledge our progress in this fight for equality. I applaud the women who led us this far and the men who encouraged us to do so. It is because I and many other youth want to see this world do better that we point out its flaws. It means that we still care. There is beauty even in wanting change. Change must happen, and we must reset our mindset.
Thank you, Gloria. Next, we have Merryl Varghese. Merryl holds a BSW and is an MSW candidate at the University of Toronto. She is the president of University of Toronto Student Association of Malayalis. Merryl is also the Ontario Chair for the Youth Wing of National Federation of Malayali Associations in Canada. Handing over to Merryl.
Thank you, Sakhi, for the intro. Hi, everyone. I want to start by talking about my identity and what I represent. I am a woman of color, a first-generation immigrant residing in Canada. I am also a daughter, a friend, and an older sister. I am also a leader, a supporter, an advocate. I am an ally, and I am driven by my identity and what I represent. A big part of who I am is my role in advocating for the marginalized, oppressed, and discriminated populations in Canada. As a woman of color, I often felt my ideas and opinions did not matter. The intersection between being a woman of color and an immigrant often acts to silence our representation. Where people in positions of power are gathering, I think twice before I speak. I think about sounding irrelevant. I think about my opinions not having significance. This second guessing isn't because of my inability or lack of knowledge, but directly related to underrepresentation and what the society has portrayed women to be for centuries. As women, we wear multiple hats. We take on many roles, many jobs, and we also sell ourselves short of the many things that we can achieve and do achieve on a daily basis. Our potential should not go unseen. Our voices need to be amplified for our generation and future generations. Encouraging women to be resilient and diverse leaders changes the narrative of leadership. When young women like myself see other women in positions of leadership, it motivates and encourages us. It provides us with hope to dream and pushes ambition. When I started my master's at UFT, the University of Toronto, I was determined that COVID-19 would not stop me from meeting new people and creating community. This meant that I would have to come out of my comfort zone, voice my opinions, passions, and ideas. With the help of other determined Malayali students, we reestablished a student-run club for Malayali students to connect and build a sense of community during these difficult times. This small initiative has opened doors for many other students to take on leadership roles, be role models, and mentors. As women, we have to trust our capabilities and strive to achieve our dreams and goals. To build more women leaders, we have to be in this together. Raise awareness, educate, support, empower, connect, listen, and speak to break the barriers. I would like to end with a quote by Maya Angelou. We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty. Happy Women's Day, everyone.
Thank you, Merryl. Finally, yet very importantly, we have Dr. Usha George. Dr. Usha George came to Ryerson in 2006 from the Faculty of Social Work at the University of Toronto, where she had been a faculty member since 1994 and associate dean since 1999. Dr. Usha George was instrumental in developing the Anti-Racism, Multiculturalism, and Native Issues Initiative at the Faculty of Social Work at UFT, which is a comprehensive approach to embracing diversity in the organizational functioning of the faculty. She holds a PhD in sociology from Ahmadu Bello University in Nigeria and an MA in sociology from Loyola University of Chicago, and a BSc in chemistry and a BEd from the University of Kerala, India. From 2006 to 2016, Dr. Usha George served as the Dean of Faculty of Community Services, and from 2016 to 2017 as Interim Vice President, Research and Innovation at Ryerson University. In 2015, she was awarded the Errol Espeweg Award for Outstanding Academic Leadership at Ryerson University. Currently, she is the director of the Ryerson Center for Immigration and Settlement, leading 3 major research studies related to citizenship experiences of racialized women, Syrian newcomers, and entrepreneurial behavior of newcomers to Ontario. The focus of Dr. Usha George's scholarship, teaching, and creative professional activity has been in the area of social work with diverse communities. Her research focuses on 3 areas: social development, newcomer settlement, and integration, and diversity and organizational change. She has an extensive research grant and publication record, as well as university teaching and administrative experience. She works in partnership with several community agencies on research and knowledge transfer activities and has worked closely with a number of government agencies. Her work has influenced government policy and practice in relation to newcomers to Canada. And in 2016, she was an expert witness to the House of Commons Committee on Family Reunification. Welcome, Dr. Usha George.
Thank you. Oh, that's a more generous introduction than I can possibly imagine. And I myself forgot most of the stuff that I did in the past. But anyway, thank you so much for the generous introduction. I'm really honored to be here. And I did not know that Malayali social workers or Malayalis are so well organized that we have associations of all different kinds, students and associations and so on. So that's a great step. And in fact, it was so delightful to see that Malayali Social Workers Association have got 300 members in Ontario. This is coming at a time when we are constantly talking about internationally educated professionals not being able to access their professions in Canada. Social workers have actually got that going. Of course, the interim program at Ryerson helps a lot, but the point is that we are able to practice your profession, which is the sort of the reason why we came to Canada. The contradiction that exists is that we are all invited because of our qualifications and experience, but once we come here, they are all kind of dismissed. So at least social workers, especially from Kerala, have overcome that barrier. And then I'm delighted that you have so many members here. And I'll go through quickly what I want to say, but then we can have a little more discussion. But the International Women's Day is actually coming at a time when COVID has actually devastated our lifestyle, the things that we do, everything. The biggest impact that we have had, COVID has had, is on women. I'm sure you must have heard the term recession. Everybody knows recession. But now a new term is being coined called she-cession. In other words, the recession is impacting women disproportionately. And everybody acknowledges that. So the other day, Justin Trudeau said, if the mark left by COVID is an increased loss of status for women, that's not something we should pursue. We should actually do something to overcome that. About a large number of women have lost their jobs. Large number of women have actually quit their jobs simply because they can't handle their children's education at school, at home, and all the rest of the stuff. So women have experienced disproportionate amount of harm during this time, and racialized women are definitely at the forefront of that oppressive state of affairs. Now, coming to leadership. I really don't talk a lot about myself and leadership because somehow I feel embarrassed that I'm trying to sell myself. So, but I will bring in some examples as we go along. So there has been a great deal of literature on leadership. If you, there are magazines, articles, books, everything about leadership. And over the past 50 years, there have been more than 1,000 studies that have been done on leadership. It is all in an effort to identify the traits and qualities that would make a good leader. But none of them have actually come up with a real sort of, a profile of the characteristics that are associated with perfect leaders, which is a good thing because we are all different. We do our leadership in different ways, but there are some basic fundamental principles that we can follow. Now, we always thought about, at least not now, but traditionally, leadership was associated with men, especially in the corporate sector. And you know that leadership, as Agnes pointed out, by the way, I want to thank Merryl, Gloria, and Irene for that eloquent presentation of their stand on women. And then, of course, Agnes for the kind of delightful presentation on the barriers that people face and how she kind of navigated the system. So when we think of leadership, we always think about, or at least men and their style of leadership, especially in the corporate sector, or even if you take universities, even if you take NGOs. 10 years ago, if you looked at the non-profit sector in Toronto, many of the big organizations had men as executive directors. They may have a staff of like 500 people. I don't think that no one was eligible for that leadership position, but traditionally that is how it worked. And the corporate leadership or any kind of leadership in the past was kind of associated with the domination, strength, determination. All of those were seen as the predominant characteristic of good leadership. But that is becoming less and less popular. Attitude toward leadership are changing, and what women offer is becoming very essential. Now, so we know that women, it may sound like a cliche, but women actually balance too many things at the same time. They are, in fact, very effective in doing that. They keep families together, organize volunteers, they unite and make changes. They they kind of contribute to the shared community life. These qualities are becoming more and more admired in the context of leadership in the whole world, whether it is corporate leadership or it is academic or NGO leadership. That's becoming more popular. A feminine way of leading includes actually helping the world to understand and be principled about it. I'll kind of explain some of that later. There's an organization called Caliper, which is based in Princeton. It actually did assessment of about 20,000 applicants, all women, and they characterized the specific statements about women's leadership qualities. One, women leaders are more persuasive than their male counterparts. Women feeling a sting of rejection, women leaders learn from adversity and carry on with "I will show you" attitude. Leaders demonstrate an inclusive team-building leadership style, problem-solving and decision-making. Women leaders are more likely to ignore rules and take risks. These are 4 statements that have come from a elaborate study or very intensive study on women and leadership by this Princeton organization. So there are certain qualities of leadership that are specific to women that are now becoming admired in the whole corporate world, academic world, all of that. And one of the things that I always felt about women leadership is they are very much inclusive. They do not, as much as possible, marginalize anyone, push anybody outside because they don't agree with my views. Most women actually kind of bring in people and say, okay, let us talk. I had so many experiences over my kind of leadership, different leadership positions at UFT and Ryerson, where people will be very angry about something, and whether it is a course allocation, whether it is about something else, whether it's about research money, whatever it is, people will be very agitated and feel like they have been rejected, they have been unfairly treated, and so on. I tried to bring them in and say, okay, let us talk about this and let us see how we can solve it in a way that does not jeopardize the chances for others. I don't want this to be seen as a favor that I'm doing to you. I would like to do it as something because you deserve it, that your work is important, and that's why we are going to do this. So that inclusivity is a very big part of what we need that women do. A term that has become very popular in recent times is authentic leadership. I'm sure many of you must have heard about this one. The authentic leadership is an approach to leadership that emphasizes building the leader's legitimacy through honest relationship with followers, which value their input and are built on an ethical foundation. So you are not going to respect me because I am so-and-so of the faculty. You're going to respect me and work with me because I respect you and I want to work with you. It's a perfectly mutual relationship that's being established. So generally, authentic leaders are very positive people with truthful self-concepts and promote openness. Now, in fact, the Harvard Business Review in 2015 declared that authenticity has emerged as a gold standard for leadership. So when you say authentic, I mean, to social workers, I don't have to explain what is authentic. So the authenticity, the honesty, the integrity, the transparency, the teamwork, the inclusiveness, all of that has become the gold standard for leadership. Gone are the days when you become a leader because you have this, and the other, and you can actually lead us simply because you have the power. Those days are gone. Especially as I see the academy, the universities, long time ago, there used to be deans and presidents who could say things as they wanted and, do things, but the collegial atmosphere, the collegial governance principle within the academy prevents them from doing that. But more and more now, we feel that authenticity is becoming the watchword or the key word in leadership. So what is authenticity? What do authentic leaders do? One, and I think some of these principles actually Agnes talked about, excuse me, they're committed to bettering themselves. All of that, nobody sits down saying that I know everything. You are a perpetual learner. You want to better yourself, whether it is the case of public speaking, or whether it's a case of knowing more about something or the other. I remember we had a provost who came, and then his first public speaking was when I invited him to speak to my faculty members. He was not a great public speaker, and I felt sorry for him because there's a whole lot of people listening to him. He's mumbling. Not that he doesn't know the stuff, but he never brought himself out that way. And the guy took public speaking lessons. I heard that later on. And so there are people who better themselves. And whatever leadership position you are in, the authentic leaders always better themselves. The second quality of authentic leaders, or what they do, is they are also have got very high levels of self-awareness. Again, to social workers, I should not be talking about self-awareness. It's one of the most important traits of a leader. It is about analyzing yourself, saying, what am I experiencing? What are my strengths? How am I showing up in the world? So that self-assessment is a very important part of this. A third thing that we need to know is about relational transparency and consistency. We cannot be, as leaders, inconsistent. You make one decision today, change the decision in another context, you can't do that. So you have to think through carefully the response to a particular situation. And everybody should know that this is the decision, and she applies it equally to everyone. She has no favorites, or she's not giving it simply because she comes from Kerala. Everything is transparent and consistent. Of course, I have to agree that there are certain things that cannot be very transparent. For example, I don't know about the NGO sector. I know that because I worked in the NGO sector for 2 years before I was recruited at UFT. The budget is also a very sensitive point all the time. What's our budget? Don't we have money for this, that, and the other? So I get those questions when I was dean and vice president. So the issue that we talk about is that the whole context of the budget is not relevant to you. The context of the budget that's relevant to you is this portion. And let's talk about that. So in other words, we should have a reason to kind of, delineate and change the discussion from becoming an attack on budget as a whole, but to bring it to a level where we can say, okay, this is what applies to me, and therefore. And another quality that authentic leaders have are also, they are mission driven. In other words, every organization has a mission. And the organizations function in order to satisfy those missions. You cannot forget the mission, because then your activities become pointless. They are all over the place. They are not focused. And people who are working with you also do not have that direction. Mission provides a direction for everyone to function. And so the leader, the authentic leader, has to be mission driven. Now, what are some of the qualities of this authentic leader, especially when it comes to women? And it applies to men as well. But the qualities that I'm going to sort of, list are things that we actually associate more with women, whether you like it or not. For example, women leaders are more transformational than men leaders. They function and role model for their subordinates. I know, the subordinate language, the language of subordinates is not necessarily in the academy or in the NGO sector. They are all colleagues and they are all teammates and all of that. Authentic women leaders inspire their teams and spend a lot of time coaching their team. And women leaders emphasize teamwork and authentic communication as key to success. I remember I said, when I went from U of T to Ryerson, one of the things that actually struck me was how, okay, let me put it the other way. University of Toronto puts a lot of emphasis on research. You as a faculty member have to have a very solid record of research for just to get your tenure, your promotion, all of that. When I went to Ryerson, I found that research was like, okay, you can do it if you want to, kind of thing. I decided to change that culture. I said, we are all faculty members. I don't want anybody to think that the faculty member from U of T is superior to the faculty member from Ryerson. We are all academics. So we need to excel in our profession. Don't worry about Ryerson or U of T. So I used to invite new faculty members. I used to invite, not so new faculty members to my office and say, what can I do to help you move your research agenda forward? This is not a judgment on what you do or what you don't do, but can I, as a dean, help you move your agenda forward to facilitate conditions for research? And people were excited about having that conversation. But at the same time, the union, the faculty union, said, oh, they are so scared to see the dean, and the dean calls them and talks to them and all of that. So I actually had a meeting with the faculty union. And I said, who is afraid of talking to me? Do I look so scary? So let us be real in enhancing and allowing people to bring out their potential and enjoy their work. Let's not make it a burden. Let's not make it an imposition. Let's have it in such a way that interchange happens and people improve their profile, so to speak. So I was talking about some of the qualities that are associated with women leadership or women and leadership in this authentic leadership context. Empathy. Again, I don't have to define that. Humility. Persuasiveness, entrepreneurial spirit, resilience. I could go on defining all of this, but again, I'm talking to a very privileged crowd, a very highly sensitive, educated, knowledgeable crowd about all of these terms. So I'm not going into that. Another characteristic is what is called emotional intelligence. Now, more and more, even in corporate settings, they are testing people for emotional intelligence. Why? Because you may know your subject matter, but you may not have the balanced viewpoint when you are challenged, where you may not have the ability to kind of, take on criticism, or you may not empathize with others, or you may not effectively communicate with others. So emotional intelligence is usually defined as the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in positive ways to relieve stress and communicate effectively, empathize with others, and overcome challenges and diffuse conflict. In fact, I need to share a story with you. My second job, which I worked for maybe about 13 months, the most, I guess, there was an executive, that was in the community sector before I went to UFT. There was an executive, I was number 2 in the organization. There was an executive director. In my opinion now, looking back, he had zero emotional intelligence because he'd get upset. Anything that somebody says that is different from what he thought, he would get upset. He would use literally 4-letter words. In fact, my office was next to his. In fact, his assistant told me that after you have joined this organization, his language has mellowed. So emotional intelligence is not something esoteric. It is something so real and so important for our leadership, because anybody who gets upset and who walks out of the room and who does all these kind of weird things because you cannot understand the other person's point of view, you cannot communicate effectively, and you cannot even manage your stress. So that's emotional intelligence. Another term that I actually started using without even knowing that it is kind of a term, a technical term, is what is called generosity of spirit. In the academic setting, and I'm sure in the NGO setting, corporate setting, everywhere, this whole notion of generosity of spirit is the openness and willingness to share our own gifts freely with others, joyously and willingly, and without expectation of receiving anything in return. For example, I can give examples in the academy, for example. You write a proposal, you are successful, you get a short grant or you get a big grant. And then 2 years from now, somebody comes and said, oh, you got that grant. Do you mind sharing your proposal with us? Technically, in a corporate sector, nobody would. I don't know whether they do it now. But in the academy, not a lot of people might do it. But that's where you say, okay, take this, but now it's outdated, it's 2 years old, but I don't know, do whatever you want with it. Because we know in our heart of hearts that this proposal that we got funded for was written for a particular purpose, and unless the person makes the kind of adjustments that he or she has to make, that's not going to work for them. So the generosity of spirit is created through respect and compassion for others. And it is also about celebrating, which is important to another person. So when a new faculty member comes saying that I got a grant, which is $20,000, we don't say, oh, it's only 20,000. We say, congratulations, that's great. You're starting, okay, this is the way to go. So keep on emphasizing what is positive and celebrate what is there. And then I'll just give a couple of, I wanted to read a quote, but it would look too pompous. So I am going to skip it, but I'll simply say that when my colleagues actually nominated me for the Errol Asperwick was a previous provost of Ryerson, and an award in his name was for outstanding academic leadership. 15, I was awarded that. In fact, the colleagues, I didn't know it at that time. the colleagues who wrote the nomination for me described me as an authentic leader. Later on, when I came across the word authentic leader and read through it, I was really flattered. I thought, oh my God, they thought that I am this. And that was a great moment for me. Now, I want to offer some tips for emerging leaders. I was told, okay, so how do we do this? I mean, every one of us have got this leadership capacity within us. But I am also aware of the fact that not everybody wants to be a leader. But you can be a leader in whatever you do. I'm sure when you're working in an agency, you would like to be known, as an effective practitioner, an effective mediator, an effective someone. That is showing some leadership. So what are some of the tips for emerging female leaders? One, practice resilience. If people criticize you, if you think it did not work, I mean, don't be discouraged. Keep on doing, what you think and is right. And then, practice till it becomes perfect. Have humility. Play to your strengths. You may not be an expert in budget and this and that and everything, but you may be good at something. Identify what is good in you or what you are good with and do that. Then be of service to others, which is the generosity of spirit notion. You help others to develop, and that's not going to take anything away from you. You are actually buying influence, you are buying goodwill, and you are buying great teamwork by helping others. Take risks. You have to take some risk if you have to be a leader. It may not be sometimes the most popular thing. At the same time, it could very well become popular. People may not have seen that. So when I started an initiative called Social Innovation at the faculty, some of the faculty members, teaching faculty members asked me, oh, is this the new kid on the block? I said, no, this is now the ways of the world. This is social innovation is something, this, that, and the other. We should actually do this, at least introduce this to our students, because I don't want any one of the students graduating from our faculty not knowing what this is, all of that. Now, fast forward 5 years, now social innovation is a huge initiative at Ryerson, and we have a huge office doing that. Now, find mentors, people who will support you, who will give you advice and so on, and don't compare yourself to others. That's a very important point. As I said, find your strengths and work on it. If somebody is great at budgets, so be it. If somebody is good at that, so be it. But what is your strength? And try to develop that. So to conclude, my advice is develop your own personality and dispositions, whether it is innovation, whether it is courage, whether it is tenacity, whether it is resilience or humility, your personality dispositions. Actually, and then the second is presenting yourself. I mean, Amy Cuddy is a Harvard professor. She talks about presenting yourselves as a key to success. She says that body language and disposition are extremely important in defining your success, or at least paving the way for your success. Appear confident. If you appear, scared or muted, so to speak, then people's impression of you would be very different. Now, by appearing confident does not mean being arrogant, but it is just an understanding, self-awareness of who you are, and that will kind of define your disposition. And Amy Cuddy has done a lot of work around that. She has done TED Talks, but she says, well, that disposition is important. The motivation, the creativity, all of that. So constantly be looking out for self-improvement, whether it is positive psychology or the reading books or picking up on certain things. You should always be looking at, okay, so what can I learn from this? Or how can I improve myself? And then you have to have developing soft skills and social networks. Everybody knows what are soft skills. that are very important. They're communication, it's about creativity, it's about teamwork, it's about work, intentionality, all of that. So create that soft skills. And of course, the importance of social networking can never be underestimated. Many a times you might realize that you are sometimes drawn, sometimes somebody tells you there is a job opening there, you should apply. In fact, my own, I'm not very good at creating social networks. In my 2.5 years of community work, at the very different meetings that I were, I went from one position to another simply because of social networks. For example, when I was working at Social Planning Council, one of the professors who was a volunteer at the Social Planning Council told me that, oh, University of Toronto has this position, you should apply. And I said, why would I apply? I won't get it. He said, how are you to decide? So that networking has a lot to do with finding jobs. And you all know that in Canada. It's a very important factor. And remember, networking for the sake of networking is not necessarily the right thing. At the same time, you don't have to be so specific about who you will work with, but basically to kind of have a network, have a group of individuals who are in the same field. I was asked to talk about somebody was telling me that even writing a resume and how it looks is important as you are moving towards leadership positions. And so I was asked to kind of talk about barriers, but Agnes has covered it, so I'm not going to go in there. But I immediately thought of this whole notion of intersectionality. Women, because of their different identity positions and the intersectionality that it offers, experience more barriers as we go along. But it's important for us, especially for racialized women, to recognize those and they kind of, as I said, identify your strengths and move towards that and learn more about yourself and improve. And then, hopefully we'll be in a better world with lots of women leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Usha George, for your wonderful insight. We will now move on to the question and answer session. This question is for Dr. Agnes Thomas. Please, could you share your leadership trajectory, being a mother and wife? Because the higher the leadership ladder a person climbs, the lesser the time it takes to one's family. And it's a greater challenge, especially for us women who come from a culture deep-rooted in patriarchy and so many expectations to fulfill. So when I meant leadership trajectory, I wanted to know at what point of your family life were you able to kickstart your leadership role? Is it before you had children, or when your children were younger, or when they became older?
Oh, that's a long question. In the interest of time, I'll try to summarize in such a way that I think with children. So probably when I had my first child, I started volunteering in organizations, probably I was 18, but I was involved in youth ministries when I was in college. So I was always involved in some form in groups and doing different things. So I had various roles that time. But I remember when I had my first child, thinking, oh my gosh, this is it. There is probably no more going forward given everything, and people keep on telling me, this is why I said we have to stop listening to voices. Oh, now you're a mother, you better stop. Or you're a woman, this is it, like, you should be happy. Even there were people who were well-intentioned who said, oh, now you are a director. So why do you need to go and do your PhD now? So you're already a leader, right? Like, so we have people who are actually well-intentioned trying to tell, like, oh, here is your family, like that comes first. I don't think there was a conflicting priority when it comes to my children or what I did outside my home. It was more about finding the balance. And again, what I choose to do during the day or during the evening. Like there was me feeling pessimistic about maybe there is no possibility of going forward to no, I'm going to make a difference. I am born to make a difference. So I will do everything in my capacity to do that with my children. And I'm not willing to sacrifice my family for it. So I remember very clearly starting my master's with 2 children under 3, and we would play on the ground, and I would be writing my papers while they were playing with the puzzles or building blocks. So we found ways to do it. And I don't think between that time to 2015, I watched any movies or read anything that was outside the sphere, right? Like, so there were things or choices I made that allowed me to do things differently. Or evening times, that became such a routine, like 5 to 8. I did not do anything but with the family, like whether we go to park or whatever I did at home, that was during that time. So that made me more organized in how I manage my things. And I think it is serving me well, having that routine in terms of providing a leadership, and also having my girls are now old enough to understand this journey. So we have this regular conversation. For example, in the evening that I go out with my girls for a walk. So we talk about various pieces and what are some of the challenges women are facing in particular, and how to tackle some of these issues, and how to develop the person, the inner person, and how that is so important in moving forward. And I do look at women in my workplaces and people who are in my networks. Is there anything that I could do that would help people? And one thing I would tell anyone, regardless of the age, is be intentional, right? Like, so, and there are days you're going to feel, oh my gosh, this is an uphill battle. You're not going to make it. And that's okay too. And learning from your mistakes, like there are decisions you're going to make that's not going to be great. Seek to reconcile with yourself as well as with others. I think those are the kind of things. So my leadership journey, I wouldn't say it started yesterday. Probably when I started volunteering, I became the group leader or that community leader at that time. I was 18 and a half or 19 when I became the group leader in that volunteer group. Then it went on. I never seen myself as a leader. I think it was an uncomfortable thing for me to even talk about it. For me, more about I was being myself, and I was given opportunities to take greater responsibilities, and being 100% committed to it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. So I'm aware that Dr. Agnes Thomas needs to leave around 12. So before we, continue with the rest of the Q&A session, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Agnes Thomas for being here with us and taking the time, out of a busy schedule to speak with us, and also talking to us about the importance of getting out of our comfort zones. So thank you very much, Dr. Agnes Thomas.
And sorry to interrupt you, Sakhi. I don't know whether Dr. Agnes got time to go through the chat box. So I would like to read out a few of them. So this is a comment from Bidhu Prasad. Like Dr. Usha said, let me share a generosity of spirit. Thank you, Agnes Thomas, for talking about the judgmental attitude from our community and to pick and choose our friends and social circles. And also from Shubha. Sorry. And okay. Such an inspiring presentation from Dr. Agnes. I personally felt that the journey that you chose was never a smooth one. However, you motivated yourself to find a way for yourself. Great approach. I admire you, and I want you to go beyond. And I want to go beyond comfortable zone. Thank you, Maso, for this opportunity. So, you know what? I should read one comment from Simon too. Sorry, I missed it. That's for
It's okay.
Okay.
I am reading the comments. Thank you so much. It's so
Thank
great to
you.
be here. Again, go out, find, learn from one another, and also go beyond our communities and our comfort zones. I think that's so very important, so very key in understanding other cultures and other traditions, and our increase our perceptual diversity. So I think that is what is going to be helping you grow beyond our zones. And again, anytime, so good to be here. Dr. Usha, great meeting you. And the young leaders, wow, you people are going to be the leaders today and tomorrow. So inspire and keep inspiring and keep investing in learning and go forward. Congratulations, Maso, and happy International Women's Day. And hopefully it will be everyday celebration, not just once a year.
Thank
And
you.
celebrate
Thank you so much.
humanity.
Thank you, Dr. Agnes Thomas. So before we go on with the Q&A session, I would like to invite Kusamam, executive team member of MASWO, to acknowledge the women who have contributed to MASWO in various capacities.
Thank you, Sakhi. MASWO, Malayali Association of Social Workers in Ontario, focuses mainly on the professional development of its members, as well as the development of the community with which we live in. Every initiative taken up by MASWO is focused on these objectives. We have organized webinars, training programs, as well as crisis intervention and advocacy for the people in need. We are grateful to all MASWO members who have contributed their valuable time and expertise for the successful delivery of these programs, educating on COVID-19 protocols, the medical and social services available during the pandemic time, and the EI and SIR benefits available for people were those supports were provided by our team members. We take this opportunity to appreciate our women members who have supported, strengthened MASWO in many ways, and wishing you all the best in your personal and professional life. Our leaders, MASWO members who contributed this program, mainly Jaya Pradeep, Case Manager, Ontario Works. Mary John, Peel Children's Aid Society, Program Development Committee. Shubha Pradeep, Social Worker, University Health Networks. Bindu Elizabeth Prasad, Clinical Lead, Black Creek Community Health Center. BC Manoj, Children's Aid Society, London. Anu Mathew, Social Worker, Ministry of Children, Community and Social Service, Youth Justice Division, Roy McMurthy Center. Ashit Dev, Social Worker, Lynn Sania. Sridisha John, Residential Support Worker, London. Remya Sundaran, Case Manager, CMHA, York Region. Anju Joy, Crisis Worker, CMHA, Peel Region. Priya Jacob, School Social Worker, Ottawa. Anju Nair, Social Worker, Scarborough Health Networks. Ajimon Mohan, Crisis Worker, Headwaters Healthcare Center, Orangeville. Mary Paul, Social Worker, Toronto General Hospital. Veena Lewis, Social Worker, University Health Networks. Manju Shiju, Case Manager, Across Boundaries. Lumi Pius, Residential Support Worker, Lenton. Saji Jose, Counselor, Violence Against Women Program. MASWO has a vision of developing young Malayali leaders representing our voice in the Canadian society. It's a privilege to say that MASWO has a bunch of young leaders who are actively involved in developing and demonstrating their leadership skills through community engagement, representing their voice on social issues. MASWO appreciates the youth for accepting our invitation to be part of MASWO by sharing their views and educating the public through arts and educational videos, especially during the pandemic. Reba and Abraham, grade 9. Anne-Marie Charles, grade 9. Angeline Benny, grade 10. Irene Mathew, grade 10. Michelle Dominic, grade 9. Dia Dominic, grade 9. Gloria John, grade 10. Merryl Varghese, BSW, MSW candidate, University of Toronto. Anna Siju, MSW candidate, Queen's University. MASO is a great platform where our members can involve in voluntary community work in many forms and enhance our knowledge, skills, and connections. We would like our female members to be more involved in our committees and leadership roles in MASO and build pathways towards the leadership roles in their workplaces. Thank you. Over to you, Sakhi.
Thank you, Kusumam, for applauding our women contributors. So continuing with our question and answer session, I see that we have a question here. So it's from someone named J. Luke. I don't know the full name, but the question goes this way. What gender-specific challenges or cultural barriers or stereotypes have you had to overcome during your career journey? And this question is for Dr. Usha Thomas. Sorry, Usha George. I'm so sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay. Wow. Okay. What gender-specific and cultural? Okay. Yeah. In my experience, the gender specific and cultural ones, I'm kind of saying it, I experienced it actually when I was looking at potential positions, because there are certain notions about who becomes something. For example, you don't become the president of a university simply because, usually because those roles are for men. Those roles are for especially white men or white women. Women are much less in those numbers. So I haven't experienced it in a big way because this was one good thing about the academy is that once you prove that you have the CV, so to speak, you have publications, and then your track record is kind of clean, that you haven't done anything not so praiseworthy, it kind of keeps going. But then when you're being considered for leadership positions, your gender, the way you speak, sometimes your cultural background, all of that would be at the background. See, now in modern hiring practices in Canada, at least in the academy, there are specialists who are called diversity, equity, and inclusion specialists. They sit through the interviews. So people cannot express to say that, oh, this is a South Asian woman, we can't have her for this one. So we will not see those things as explicit. They may be implicit in those decisions, and we have no way of knowing those. So that's what I'd say. So nobody told me because I'm a racialized woman, you can't be this, that, and the other. But they would have had, who knows, in the back of their mind for certain things.
Thank you, Dr. Usha George. And as an extension to that question, so way back in the 90s, when you were faculty at UFT, I'm assuming that it was predominantly white academia. So yeah. How do you navigate through all that, being a woman of color, and move on to higher positions, like, especially in academia, right? Because I can't even imagine how it would have been for you.
Right. Okay, so that's a good question, because to which I have the answer, so to speak. One, yes, I was the first non-white woman. I think there were one or two, but they were all retired long time ago. But anyway, during that time in the early 90s, yes, I was the only non-white woman. I was brought in to introduce that initiative you're talking about, anti-racism, multiculturalism, all of that kind of stuff. It was basically to increase the diversity of not only faculty, but also students, and also research, and also community relations of the faculty. The faculty and University of Toronto on the whole kind of looked like isolated white, what do I say, sections of or towers of power, and then other people were not caught into that. So once I went there, I should say that I was a little intimidated. I kind of kept thinking that, oh, I have to do this. And then, of course, I have to teach. And teaching is obviously extremely, valued. At the same time, every student has a right to express their opinions about the professor. So you kind of go through that. Then you have to do your research. You have to publish. And so in some ways overwhelming in the first couple of years, because I had to introduce that initiative, I have to do this, that, and the other. So a couple of things that I did, I was conscious of myself. I did not pretend to be a white woman. I did not pretend to be anybody other than myself. I was proud of my background. And I say, all my life, I taught in universities in Kerala. I taught in St. Teresa's College, Ernakulam, and then Ethiopia and Nigeria. So I know my material. I know how to teach, so I don't have to worry about that part. And then the introduction of diversity was not necessarily uncontroversial, because there were faculty members who have been there for 35 years and why do we need this now? What is this thing about? All of that. So one of the things that helped me and helped the initiative to go on was I never challenged anyone saying, this is a diverse community, this is a diverse society, Canada is multicultural, come on now, we have to move on. I slowly worked with people who had similar views. For example, our curriculum was very white oriented, very mainstream oriented. So we had a curriculum committee. I was part of it. So we started introducing courses that addressed diversity. For example, I introduced the first course on immigrants and refugees, social work with immigrants and refugees. So it is not creating controversy. I know we talk about challenging hierarchy, challenging oppression, challenging all of that. You can do that without making much noise and without making enemies. You can create allies. There's always one or two people who will work with you, and to slowly find them and kind of ask them, what do you think this will look like? Or what do you think? So they will become kind of involved. They'll feel like they're privileged that, ask them. And that's how I managed that. And then, of course, I worked very hard, as, Agnes was saying. I usually got up around 4 a.m. or 4:30 a.m. to write my papers. Soon after dinner, I'll go downstairs. When everybody settles down to watch television, I'm going downstairs to kind of prepare for my lecture and stuff like that, and or write papers. So it was challenging in that way, but then I kept telling myself, you wanted it all along. You wanted this when you came to Canada, or when you came to Canada, this was your ideal. You got it. Now you cannot let go. So you put in all the effort, but you give enough time to family. Like Saturdays for my family, of course, in the evenings when I come, there's family time. Then of course, Saturdays, Sunday afternoon, I sit down to work again. So, making those changes and getting people to be your allies rather than becoming controversial. And in fact, one of the white women who were very, for a long time at the faculty told me that your style is very different. We were all expecting somebody to come and literally kind of beat us up for for non-diversity, but your style is very different. Which encouraged me.
Thank you, Dr. Usha George. That was quite motivating. So due to time constraints, we will, look at winding up the session. So before we wind up the session, I would like to thank Dr. Usha George, for her insights and especially, enlightening us on the concept of authentic leadership. Thank you very much. That was quite enlightening. I would also like to thank our 3 youth speakers, Irene Mathew, Gloria John, and Merryl Varghese, for sharing their views. That was quite brave and confident of them. Thank you very much. I then thank Maswo team with a special reference to Kusumam Lal, who played a major role in organizing today's session. Last but not the least, I would also like to thank all our audience who virtually gathered here today to make this a success. Let me conclude with the words of Oprah Winfrey. You get in life what you have the courage to ask for. So we all need to remember this powerful statement, and let us celebrate womanhood, stay strong, believe in our thoughts, and let us lead and widen our horizons. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Usha.
Oh, thank you all very much. I really enjoyed being part of this.
Thank you for that sisterly advice for all of us.